All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to day 4 of our Thyroid Hormone Reset Experience Live. This workshop series has been so good and so fun to be here with you ladies this week. I know we've had different people tuning in every day and many people commenting and sharing with me that they're watching the replays. Such good information. And I'm excited to be here today. We wrap up. Today is our final day together in this experience. And then for those of you who want to continue to work together, to continue to have that support, we can definitely talk more about what that looks like at the end. But as we get started, let's start with a grounding present moment, as always, to get centered, to be here. So I invite you to close your eyes if you're able, or just take a soft gaze. And begin to breathe deeply, breathing in through your nose, filling up your abdomen. And exhale, releasing everything. Maybe feel your shoulders soften, sinking deeper into your seat. Another deep breath in. Breathing in possibility, vitality. And exhale, exhaling, releasing any tension, any frustrations, any disappointments, any lingering overwhelm that gets to melt away. 2 more deep breaths, breathing in inspiration, possibility, vitality, and energy. We're going to be talking a lot about energy today. And exhale, let that soak in. Just imagine this energy soaking into your cells. And one more deep breath in. Just envision almost like a light, a stream of golden light, supercharging, energizing you. And as you exhale, just know that as a result of your time, energy, and focus today being here, you are guaranteed some amplification in your health. Either it will happen during our session or following our session, but simply destoring, unprogramming, and releasing any blocks, any resistance that has gotten in the way up until now. All right, and so it is, roll the shoulders back, go ahead and rub your hands together. And we have lots of insights to talk about today. Today, removing toxins, and I kind of look at this as there's many different things to kind of encompass the conversation, the topic of toxicity. That's why there's so many fad detox programs and things like that in the health and wellness space. And I like to look at it from a couple of different angles, right? So really what we're helping to think about is cellular capacity. You know, we've been talking about this whole week about health is wealth. And when your cells can function at a really high level, it amplifies literally every area of your life, including your wealth of financial possibility, because you can be more creative, more influential, more inspiring, more inspired and impactful in your life. So for many of my clients, this has led to their businesses growing, 2xing their income, new job opportunities that have been able to be unlocked and opened up, even when it comes to leading new teams. So literally like a direct correlation in financial expansion as a result of the energy and the attention that they put on transforming their health. It also looks like an increase in wealth in your relationships, because how you show up, who you are being in each and every day, moment by moment, shifts. It just changes. When you feel better about yourself, you tend to have more patience, more grace, more consideration, just curiosity as opposed to judgment about different life circumstances or conversations or interactions that happen with your spouse or your kids. I know for me, like when I was going through my health challenge, I can now see it from a different lens of who I was as a mom, was just really sharp and really quick to judge, quick to correct my daughters all the time. And now, I mean, yes, there's still times where I get frustrated. There's still times where they drive me crazy. But for the most part, very quickly, I can recalibrate and have the tools to recenter myself. So it's a matter of just getting calm. And when you're calm, when I'm calm, I approach the interaction in a completely different state. So it changes our relationship. It allows us to be truly more connected. And like I'm a trusted parent to my daughters now. Like they'll open up to me, they're teenagers, right? They'll open up to me about things that are hard to talk about and are uncomfortable. And that is what I want. I'm glad at this season in life you want them to have a safe space. That doesn't mean I always agree with them, and I'm not necessarily looking to be their best friend, but it's knowing that, I'm there. I'm always there to be in their corner, and they can have this type of relationship. So anyway, I got off track on a tangent, but how we show up and when we feel good in our bodies, it truly impacts every single area of your life. I think we know that. And the fun, like the experiences. Like I'm thinking of my client Mariam, who last summer, prior to working together, she was riddled with anxiety, had tons of anxiety, like every single day. She's like, the littlest thing would get me worried. And then my mind was like on the trail of its own. And then so we had done work and she's gotten in a totally different place, really learned the tools to reframe her thoughts, get the nourishment so her body had what it needed to synthesize enough serotonin so that she had neurotransmitter balance and felt better. And the situation came up where they were out boating in the friend's boat, and they're like, oh, hey, mom, do you want to take a turn on the tube? And she's like, normally I would have never said yes to that experience because something could happen. I could get injured. I'd fall into the water, the lake water, and have seaweed all over. Like, she's like, there would have been a million reasons going through my head, 6 months ago, where I would have never said yes to an opportunity like that, even though I was scared and a little like, not sure. She's like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going for it. And she said, I had a blast. Got on that with her son, and like, her 8-year-old son just got to have like such a fun, that's living life experience, because you are in a place of higher degree of confidence, higher, possibility of like my body's not going to get hurt. I feel confident in my body. I feel good in my body. And so you just truly have more joy in your life because of how you show up and the experiences that you get in your life. So all good things, but let's dive in today and talk about toxins, removing toxins, and how this is a really key piece to up leveling your vitality and your health. And oops, before I do that, let me go back in case you haven't yet pulled off the link to our workbook. I have that here. I'll put it into the chat. It's also in the email that you get, but you can always, and I think in the workbook, we are on page 46 in the workbook for day 4. I'm going to share my screen here and tune us in to health is wealth, wealth in all areas of your life. Day 4 today, we've gone through a lot, right? In the beginning, day 1, Monday, we talked about identifying the root cause, using your symptoms as cues and looking at your hormone health assessment to kind of see where your body is signaling that it could use some support, it could use your collaboration, and what areas to start to navigate. We also talked about day 1, replenishing key nutrients, knowing and identifying which foods you're eating consistently, that PFFV strategy, protein, fiber, healthy fat, and veggies. Those are necessary every single day for our cells to function at a high level. Then Tuesday, we did step 3, looking at restoring digestive capability and optimizing your gut microbiome health and how different hormones can be affected by what's going on in our gut or what's not going on effectively in our gut. Also, our immune system, over 90% of your immune system is stored along the gut. So if your gut is having some trouble, then it's going to affect the immune system. When we think of like Hashimoto's, what I had, autoimmune disease, that's immune dysregulation. And that can be tied to stress. It can be tied to food or lack of food, several different things that we discussed on Tuesday. Yesterday was about reset thinking, how your thoughts and your perceptions and your beliefs really shift and shape your health and your lived experience and how that affects different hormones. And today is about removing toxins. So let's continue on here with this, removing toxins that are disrupting hormone balance. Because when you think about hormones, they're the messenger, they're the communication molecules in the body. And when we have too much toxicity built up, it blocks communication. So it really can, like insulin resistance, we're going to be talking about insulin resistance. That's a great example of blocked communication. Things are not working as they're designed to work because the hormone signal can't do its job. And we know that when we take these steps sequentially, intentionally, one step at a time, it doesn't have to be, I have clients say to me all the time, like, I'm not sure if I can do all of these things. I'm like, great. You don't have to do everything perfectly. You just have to have a plan, stick with it, and continue to make steps forward. Guaranteed. Every single one of my clients has great transformation, not because they do it perfect, but just because they continue the process. Like Beth lowered her cholesterol medication, improved her bone density score and her cardiac score. Like we're looking about the symptom or the physiology that shows up on the doctor's test, right? And also your lived experience, how you feel in your body, the confidence that you have, the fact that you're sleeping better through the night, you have more energy in the afternoons, no longer struggling with those afternoon crashes. Or Deanna, who beat thyroid disease and insomnia. So again, changing her life. She's a mom of three. She's like, I completely became a different person when I could sleep again. So it's really important. Movement, so we're going to be talking about movement as a detoxification strategy today. And clean ingredients have a radical impact on our hormone health. So getting into a little bit of the physiology of it, when you have healthy cells, they make ATP or adenosine phosphate, which is, think of it like a unit of energy, right? ATP is like almost like a unit of energy, right? And in order to have our cells make ATP, several steps need to happen before that last piece. So these are the steps, the staircases. We have to eat food that contains nutrients, then digest that food. We talked about this in digestion, right? Then absorb those nutrients into the blood supply, and then have those absorbed and activated nutrients move around the body through the blood and get into the cell. And then finally, once they're in the cell, in the mitochondria, which is like the energy factory part of the cell, inside the mitochondria, that is where a unit of ATP is produced. And if we have a lot of ATP, we have a high degree of vitality. That's how you have wellness. When we have low ATP or inefficient cell mitochondria, that's when we create illness and dysfunction in the body. Literally the core of almost every major disease category at its root is some type of cellular respiratory problem, cellular inefficiency with producing ATP, because that's a unit of energy. So the cells can't do their job, essentially. But every single one of these steps requires ATP to be done efficiently. So poor cellular metabolism can become a vicious downward cycle. If we have really low metabolism, then we have less ATP to help do all the steps before it, right? So you can see how this becomes kind of like a cycle. And metabolism, at the end of the day, we're talking about is metabolism. Metabolism is the process of generating energy. So I like to give a little bit of a visual. This is what the difference it looks like when we have cells that are high ATP producing cells that have good metabolism, or a healthy cell, or if we have an underpowered cell. The one on the right is an underpowered cell. It's an unhealthy cell. In other words, it does not have good ATP production. So you can see that if we have ineffective mitochondria, like the cell on the right, and it looks kind of rusted and corroded, that cell will produce a little bit of energy. So that like blue kind of little dots that are coming off is a little bit of energy that it outputs, but it has a lot of harmful free radicals. In other words, a lot of inflammation. That's like the byproduct, that's kind of the junk. We want our cells to ideally look like the one on the left, which produces a lot of energy, those little blue dots, and a little bit of byproduct, a little bit of harmful free radicals, inflammation, because there's always going to be some kind of leftover residue, if you will, from just the function, the process that's happening inside the cell. But if the cell is very inefficient and can't do the process well, that's when you get a lot of inflammation, but only a little bit of energy that's created, a little bit of ATP. So when we think about insulin resistance, right? Insulin resistance is when insulin, the hormone, is not able to bring in glucose inside the cell, because the cell is basically sending out a signal to block more glucose from coming inside. So people think like insulin resistance is the precursor to diabetes. Insulin is a hormone, right? That's one of our top 6 metabolic hormones that we tested on day 1 in the hormone assessment. Well, insulin resistance isn't necessarily about a problem with insulin. It's a signal that the cell is broken. It's an underpowered cell like the one on the right here. Because when you have ineffective mitochondria that can't do a good job of converting energy, the cell, in its wisdom, it will send out a signal saying, no, 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 don't keep giving me more glucose. Don't keep giving me more fuel. I can't really use the fuel and do a good job with it. So I'm going to kind of shut you off. And that's when the cell becomes insulin resistant, right? So insulin resistance is not the problem. It's the effect of unhealthy cells that is the problem. Same thing when we think of sex hormones. Some people can have sex hormone binding globulin. It can be a sign where there's more inflammation in the body and the sex hormones aren't getting into the cells effectively to signal them to do their job. It's more a matter of inflammation than it is a matter of not enough hormone per se. So what's one of the strategies we can do to help detoxify our cells? Well, when you think about in order for our cells to maintain healthy flow and to be able to produce units of energy, units of ATP, we have to have good, strong lymphatic tissue. Lymphatic tissue is where it takes kind of the leftover waste after the cellular chemical reactions and moves it out, usually through urine. It helps you excrete or sweat, helps you excrete the cellular waste, right? Well, this little picture here shows all the little green areas where our lymph nodes are located. You hear of like lymphatic swelling and different things like that. Like your lymph system is actually a huge part of the immune system as well, but the lymph tissue is spread throughout the body. But unlike our cardiovascular system that has a pump, the heart, which pumps the blood around the body so that things keep moving, our lymph tissue does not have its own pump. So if you have an inactive lifestyle, that's like choosing to have your cells sit in their own sewage, because movement is what moves things through and detoxifies those channels of moving that cellular waste out of the way, right? If we're not moving throughout the day, it's like your cells are just kind of sitting in their own sewage. Kind of a gross visual, right? So that's why activity is so important for health. Activity supports thyroid and hormone balance in a lot of different ways through detoxification, because movement helps that lymphatic tissue to remove waste, metabolic waste. It also decreases our insulin levels. We're going to be talking about that in a minute, even more, why insulin levels stay regulated and lower the more you move. It also helps to regulate testosterone and estrogen levels, or other sex hormones. It releases endorphins, which are natural painkillers and mood elevators. And it helps to lower TSH and increase T3 and T4. So it helps to balance thyroid action. So here are some ways to improve cellular metabolism. In other words, the cell's ability to produce energy, ATP. We can have our mitochondria increase. So the number of mitochondria, the energy factories inside of each cell can increase in number. When we do strength training, resistance training type activity, that increases mitochondria. We can have each of the mitochondria be more functional. And this is what I call consistent muscle contraction. We're going to be talking more about what that looks like, but that's just movement. Anytime you're moving your body in any different direction, this can look like walking, stretching, any type of movement. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be intense. It's just literally like changing position. That helps your mitochondria to be more functional. And then have each mitochondria process more energy. That is when we do the intensity workouts, where you get your heart rate spiked and you really go at a higher level and then scale back those like high intensity intervals. So these are ways that we can improve metabolism. And each of these things will help the body to turn potential energy capacity into energy instead of shunting it into the storage form of triglycerides or fat. So when we move our body consistently and in effective ways, it makes your body use the energy. So you actually feel more energized in your daily life. You actually have a way to combat that fatigue, that afternoon energy crash, right? because it gives your cells more fuel to work well. And it also decreases the storage of fat in the body, because essentially glucose that isn't used gets turned into fat and it needs to be stored somewhere. It's actually fairly easy to do these things. And I like to show some studies. Studies show that people who walk more than 7,000 steps per day have a 50 to 65% lower risk of dying, period. That's across the board on all causes of mortality. That's how important walking is, or movement. Really, they do walking because that's the easiest thing to do for studies. But what it's talking about is consistent muscle contraction, movement of some type. This is because walking is a glucose disposal signal to improve your cell's capacity to convert energy. In other words, the more you move, the more your cells practice and get better at converting energy. This looks like 3 to 5 short walks per day. If walking were a pill, it would be the single most impactful pill of all of modern medicine. I think that's really noteworthy. If people were always looking at for like, what's the pill? What's the thing I need for me to improve my health? If there was one thing that you did and it was only one thing, walking would be the single most effective thing across the board. In a paper in JAMA with 6,300 participants followed for 10 years, showed this reduction, the 7,000 steps had a reduction in diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, gastric reflux, obesity, depression, and more and more and more. Pretty much everything across the board was improved just simply when they were walking. Muscle contraction, in other words, movement in different directions, is like medicine for the body. And that's a detoxification strategy because it moves your lymphatic tissue. And here's why that happens. When you think about our cells, so this is like little cells, right? They have these things called glucose channels. That's where the glucose from the bloodstream, like after we eat, our glucose goes up. Or if we're stressed, so we're in that fight or flight response, our glucose goes up. Glucose in the blood supply floating around becomes problematic when it's too high. So the body tries to use insulin to say, hey, open up cells. Like insulin's like a little key. It goes in the insulin receptor and it turns and it opens up the glucose channel to say, okay, we can take some glucose into the cell and convert it to energy. We can use it to do our job, right? That's like the little picture on the right is the insulin going in like a key, opening up the glucose channel. So now you can create more energy at a cellular level. But when we are sedentary, so if we're sitting at our desk doing a day job, which many of us do, we live in America where there's a lot more intellectually stimulating jobs than there's physically stimulating jobs, right? So a lot of us use our head, we're working from the neck up, but we're not necessarily moving our body from the neck down most of the day. So when we're sitting at a desk job for 5 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, those glucose channels, those little dark green pieces that you see in the left picture right here, this little part right here, that kind of shrivels up and sinks into its sac. Instead of staying out, pushed out to the outer part of the cell membrane, it like goes and hides. It kind of goes in its little cave and it sinks back into the middle of the cell and just kind of waits inside until you move again. Well, guess what? If this channel right here is not exposed on the surface of the cell, then when the glucose is floating around in the blood supply, insulin doesn't work to open up the receptor, and so it doesn't go inside to charge up the cell and give you energy. That's when most people feel fatigue because they haven't been moving. So the glucose channels are like kind of hidden away, and the glucose isn't getting in to help your cells convert energy. So it's like you kind of get stuck in this pattern where there's glucose floating around the blood, but it's not getting in the cells where it needs to be activated. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like we're just stuck with this low energy experience because the glucose isn't being utilized. And again, here's how this is demonstrated. There were a couple different studies. So a person who walks 1 to 2 minutes every 30 minutes throughout the day, and comparing that to a person who works out for 1 hour in the morning, goes like, I'm gonna go to the gym before I go to work, and then sits all day at their desk job, right? The total time walking or moving or exercising is 60 minutes in both scenarios. But these two examples have a completely different physiological effect on our cells. This is a study, right? 2 clinical studies. There was another study that did 20 minutes of walking after each meal. So 20 minutes of walking 3 times a day, 60 minutes of walking, or 2 minutes every 30 minutes. So get up from your desk, do a little lap, walk around just for 2 minutes, and get back down, go back to work. Again, completely different responses in the body, even though the total amount of movement time was 60 minutes in all of these cases. It's kind of like the example, if we look at their studies that show the blue zones, where the most centurions, people who live to be 100 plus, live in the world, they're called the blue zones. It's kind of like studying how people live their life in the blue zones versus like what we do in America, where we have more gym memberships than any other country in the world, but yet we have the most level of obesity and the most chronic disease rates, right? So exercise, in the way that Americans tend to think of it, as like go to the gym for 45 minutes, an hour, do your workout, and then sit the rest of the day, is not nearly the same as moving consistent muscle contraction throughout the day, because your lymphatic tissue is moving all day long. The short movement regularly have significantly lower 24-hour glucose averages. They're metabolically healthier. Their cells can convert energy much more effective rate. And their hormones, their insulin, their hormones are balanced. They're less at risk for diabetes. So the solution is very simple. It's not about losing weight and always focusing on the number on the scale. It's about how we are changing and shifting our cellular effectiveness. And really that changes where the weight comes from. It's called the body composition change. I like to show this because I've had clients who literally have actually increased their weight, their number on the scale. I'm less concerned with the number on the scale and more concerned with how your body is functioning. You can see the difference. Physically, there's a difference. When you have less fat, fat takes up more space. So stored glucose becomes fat, right? If it's not used in the cells. But when you have more muscle, it's more lean, it's smaller. So it looks different on the body. Both of these pictures were 5 pounds, but one is a lot bigger and looks different on your body than the other. So again, it's about metabolism, right? How effectively your cells can convert energy. So movement, movement is a huge piece for the detoxification of our body. There's another side of it too, which is like our environment of what we live in and what we're around. Our clean ingredients can have a radical impact on our health, because that just gives more work for the body to detoxify if we're around a lot of chemicals. There are hormone disrupting toxins in our environment, and you can improve your body's total toxic threshold, reduce inflammation by removing some of these toxins from your home. This supports healthy body composition and improves hormone balance and hormone communication. So here are some ways. I go through this fairly quickly because A, many people have heard of some of these things before, and B, it's like a step-by-step. We do this with our clients and one step at a time, so it's not overwhelming, because it can be massively overwhelming, and overwhelm is a toxin, as we know, because it triggers the fight or flight response. But things to think about is air, opening up windows, air out your home weekly, spend time outdoors. Fresh air, oxygen is really critical. Water, having filtration in your kitchen or your shower. At the very least, get the chloride and fluoride out of the water. Food, read ingredient labels. Again, look for foods that have ingredients that you can recognize, not a whole bunch of words that your great-grandmother wouldn't even know what they are. And choose organic when possible, especially with the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Food storage, where you keep food in your refrigerator, in your storage, using glass as an option to swap out for plastic to diminish those, different exposure chemicals. Even household cookware, to recommend stainless steel or ceramic or glass when possible. Avoid those non-stick pans. Personal hygiene, beauty products, so you can avoid those like antibacterial items tend to have a lot of hormone balancing toxins, and things that include fragrance. Fragrance is a very big, broad catch-all term that can be cover for a lot of hormone disrupting chemicals. And then house cleaning products, thinking about using some natural solutions such as baking soda and vinegar, different things like that, as alternatives for the highly chemicalized. So as you can see, many things can go wrong with the balance of our hormones. The toxins, the chemicals that you have around you, chronic stress that we talked about this week, low nutrient intake. When we have more inflammation or when we have more toxins, then our need for nutrients only goes up, because in order for the body to help manage the burden of that toxic threshold, it needs more raw materials to fight off. Poor ability to detoxify if we're sitting all day long, or we don't have the nutrients needed for our liver to remove certain toxins and hormones. Hypothyroid function, we talked about this week. When your thyroid is slow, everything slows down. So including removal of toxins in the body. Constipation, that is a definite sign of, when we looked at digestion, right? So constipation is a sign of poor detoxification and maldigestion or malabsorption, being able to digest and break down or absorb the nutrients as they're coming in, again, can lead to problems with our hormone balance. So we know that that's why it's so important to take these predictable steps, right? Use these 5 steps to predictably create a transformation, and not to have it be overwhelming, to simplify it, focus on one thing at a time. That's why with our clients, we break it down and focus on one key area each month that we're optimizing, that we're building health and improving. And just like Carissa did, I mean, this is literally for 2 years, she really learned what her body needed and what it didn't work well with, made some changes to her lifestyle, her movement routine, the way she was nourishing herself, and really how she was responding to her kids. So she had 2 kids that for a long time were high sources of anxiety and stress. And the way that she interacts with them, the way that she thinks about and really like has that bandwidth, because her nervous system is more regulated, to approach situations with more calm, more grace, more presence, it changes, and it changes your body physically on the outside too. So she lost weight, balanced her hormones. 2 years later, it's still in a completely different place. So it's like, we're not about doing this to fit into a dress for a special occasion, right? It's like, what can you do that's going to help set your body up for success, because you know differently about how your body works. And Kathy, again, tested her hormones for her. She found out her testosterone was really low. Her body wasn't able to synthesize. Prior to that, she was skipping breakfast for she's like, I don't think I've eaten breakfast for like 5 years. And no wonder, I mean, her body's running on empty on a lot of different days. And that was one of the key things that we helped her to get in consistent nourishment, helped her to get a different exercise plan that built in some strength training to help stimulate that protein synthesis and stimulate the testosterone, get her some hormone support. So I want you to think about, like, what do you need in order to continue to focus on optimizing your hormone health so that you can feel really good in your body. I mean, that's what we're all here for, right? And I know every single person is unique. You can definitely get insights from doctors and specialists and nutritionists and read everything online. Like, there's no lack of information now, but it's really about what does your body need and what is going to serve you best. So I like to kind of pause here and say, this is my invitation for you to really step forth and say, what do I need? Where am I struggling as I look at all these different pieces? Because like I said, I'm guilty of this in the past. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I'm guilty of being somebody who would read a lot of information and who would, Google things or look up things or learn about things. But until I sat down and actually had a mentor and a coach who worked with me to, okay, let's slow down the inputs and take some things in, but also streamline and really focus on what am I putting into practice consistently? Because that's what changes your health. And it's hard to put something into practice if you're doubting what to do all the time, or if you're uncertain, like, well, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Should I be following Whole30, or should I be doing a Weight Watchers plan to feel better and get rid of the bloat, right? Should I be doing a detox program and the celery cleanse, or should I go join Orange Theory and start this new workout routine? When you have that kind of uncertainty and that doubt, it's hard to stick with it, candidly speaking, because it's like you don't have a roadmap, you don't have somebody to guide you through it. So that's, for me, that was the game changer, is really getting some collaboration honestly, someone to call me out to say, hey, listen, like, okay, we talked about this, like, how is it going? Are you able to consistently implement that? And I was like, I'm actually getting stuck. And usually for me, when I was getting stuck, it's because I had some limitation or belief. For me, a lot of it actually was around my relationship with time. We talked about some of those saboteurs, those why bother symptoms that came up in our day one training. And it was my relationship with time. And I can, looking back now, I can see that I just didn't even, I couldn't articulate this because it's not what I would have thought, but I didn't recognize that I didn't value my own health enough to put my health at the top priority, because I think I just didn't know what to do differently or how to do it differently. And I wasn't sure if what I would do would be useful or even worth the results. So because of that uncertainty, it was easier to pay attention to my husband and my daughters and even the school board and all the other things in my life and my work. It was easier to really let those drive where my focus and where my attention went. And then it's easy. We live in a world where it's easy to fill up your plate with stuff. The harder thing to do is to choose to say no to things and to put those loving boundaries to say, like, I'm choosing to put this first, which means some of these other things may have to be put on pause or delegated or altered in a different way. That was hard for me. It's to really say, like, okay, I can do this, and I can have a step-by-step plan to walk through how to create this transformation. But I'm telling you, it changes everything. It's like when you start with you, then everything else that you care about improves, but it's hard to trust that you can start with you and it can really work, right? Um, so I just want to share that for anyone's in the space who's thinking about, like, I've been wanting to make a change, but I'm just not sure what to do. And this process of how do I go about it? What does it look like? It's definitely something that, you know, I'm here to help. I love helping women. It is my mission. I think you know why, because I've seen firsthand how hard it is to have you and your family struggle with health challenges, but then also how rewarding it is to see this massive transformation. So I want to go ahead and invite you, if you haven't yet considered or thought about what would it look like to have support, so that you can stop relying on symptom management, because that's not adequate. That's just like trying to keep you so that you don't decline more rapidly. It's not actually building health, right? That's disease care. That's not health care. We want to create this process, this predictable process for you to start to feel better. And I'd love to talk more about what it would look like to partner together if you're in that space. Because I want you to think about, if you had ongoing clarity, confidence, guidance, and inspiration to take the consistent action, how you can have more energy. You can sleep better and wake up feeling refreshed. You can feel eager, feel clear, feel peace and joy again in your life on a regular basis, and find that spark in your life again. The benefits that my clients see over and over again of balancing the hormones naturally is boosting your energy and your productivity, your focus, your, just aliveness, enjoy deep sleep, wake up feeling refreshed, expand your wealth and capacity in every area of your life, and release weight. That's like I said, that's like the natural consequence that comes at the end when your metabolism is kicked into gear and when your hormones are working more effectively. I know that's a thing that most of us want first, but as life is, it's almost like we get to go through the process, and that's the natural byproduct that happens. So the Thyroid Hormone Solution program is really made for women who know that I want this change. I want this, and I'm ready for something different. Like I said, we go through 5 steps over a course of several months. First, identifying the root cause so that you can get unique insights into your body now, not where it was maybe when you were in your 30s or 5 years ago. But it's not taking generic health information. It's looking at your nutrients. It's looking at your symptoms. It's looking at your body, and then creating a roadmap based on that so that you can have clarity. If you don't have it, oftentimes you lack clarity, which means confidence starts to fade. And that increases your chance of giving up. And if you give up, you definitely aren't going to get the results, right? The next thing we talk about is replenishing those important nutrients, getting them in a simple and sustainable way, something that can fit into your life. I mean, like I said, I have women that are travel agents that travel across the country for work all the time. I have women who are running 4 businesses simultaneously. I have women who have kids and toddlers and all different ages, ones ailing parents. So they have full lives, lots of things going on. And it's like, we need to get you a plan that you can work towards that works with your life. Because I can give you this like 50-point plan of what to eat and what not to eat. But if it's only going to work for 2 weeks and then you're never going to be able to sustain it, that's not an effective strategy. It won't get you the results, right? If you don't have it, you can ditch the rigid elimination diets and the meal plans that lead to resentment and an unhealthy relationship with food. And then restoring digestion and looking at your gut health, because that is so foundational to impact your mood, your energy, your vitality. And if you don't have it, sometimes you can have, problems where you're eating healthy foods, but if you don't have this good digestion, this good microbiome health, then you can't absorb the nutrients. So you don't get the benefit of the foods that you're choosing, and you can still feel depleted. It's not effective. It's not working. Reset your thoughts. This is really helping you to make the connection with how your perception affects your hormone health, so that you can rewire your brain to easily have more contentment, more peace, more appreciation in your life, less frustration, overwhelm, and fear and anxiety and worry. If you don't have this, this is when we can kick into imposter syndrome, right? New challenges and trusting yourself to maintain the healthy habits that you want, or, really just trusting yourself to get these permanent health improvements. Usually when we don't do the neuroscience and we don't include that, it's very transient. It's temporary. It doesn't last. And then removing toxins. We talked about this today, so that you can learn and embody ever-evolving master level mindset, neuroscience, clean living strategies, and minimize the triggers that disrupt your health. If you don't have it, your body and your mind will inevitably become overwhelmed with inflammation, depletion, or blockage that leads to chronic disease. So these things together really become a predictable process. And it's about, here's what you need. I always tell people, like, get this checklist. If not from me, then find your support, find what's going to help you to get these things consistently. And I think it's really important to have comprehensive support around you, because if you just pick 1 or 2 of these, likely you're not going to create the results, and you'll get frustrated. You will believe the narrative that it doesn't work for me, or my body's broken, or I've tried it again and it still was a waste of money, still was discouraging. It's because you need to have this comprehensive support, right? Something that includes some education, because you can learn about your hormone health, so it makes sense. You can appreciate your body. Something where it's a unique health history and symptom questionnaire, so you're looking at your body now. Functional lab work to know how to customize, and supplement recommendations and nutrient support for you. Also, like I said, that mindset coach that's going to help you give some new thoughts and new perceptions and new beliefs. And the neuroscience, like we do a lot of different strategies to help expand your nervous system capacity, to change the way your body and your brain communicate and what your triggers are. And then a movement plan. We talked about that. Consistent muscle contraction today, and getting the strength training. What does it look like for your movement plan so that your metabolism is supercharged? And all of these things come together to really give you that personalized roadmap. So this is what is going to get you the results. And again, like I would say, I'm all about, like, do it the most cost effective and the fastest way that's going to get you the results. Not about adding extra things in that are superfluous, unnecessary. We don't need more information. We need more transformation. So in this thyroid hormone solution program, you get essentially 5 programs in one. You get the functional medicine aspect, looking at your labs and the functional component. You get the nutrition, customization. You get the digestive support for your gut health. You get the mindset and the reframing and the neuroscience to create that permanent change, and the detoxification. What does that look like for your movement plan, your consistent muscle contraction, how to go through a step-by-step process to minimize triggers that are in your home, right? And simplify that. And this is really going to allow you to create really life-changing results. Just like, again, these clients here, I'm feeling fantastic. No more afternoon slumps. I'm getting my workouts in the morning and bloating is gone. Your inspiration and support is valuable. I don't know about you, but I don't like to do things alone, or at least I'm not nearly as effective if I try to do it on my own. If I have a buddy, if I have somebody like that, we're doing this, we're cheering each other on, we're in this, I'm sharing the journey, like it completely changes not only it makes it fun, but it changes the experience, the results. I'm celebrating getting full 7 hours of sleep consistently. The practices and tools you share have really been a game changer for me and have helped me to let go of the guilt and the shame I used to feel. Again, a lot of it's sometimes our own past like thoughts and beliefs and emotions that block us from doing the things that we know could be helpful for us. Hey, Amanda, I've been doing really well and lost a few more pounds. I'm so conscious of the healthy fats and the nutrients I'm putting in my body. I love my system for meal plans and how it fits into my life. So here's what you get inside the Thyroid and Hormone Solution Program. You get some consults with me personally to review your situation and where you are, and really building that plan step by step with you along the way. Weekly support every single week. I don't want to like give you some ideas and say, come back in 3 months and let's retest your labs and see where you're at. It's like, no, it's about what is coming up in the journey. What's that little tweak? What's the little celebration? What's the thing that you're getting stuck with so that you're never alone? Food, nutrient, lifestyle, guidance, and support all the way through. Every single month we get together twice a month for live trainings to dive deeper and get you through any blocks. This is where sometimes like you didn't even really realize there was a block there until I bring it up and we're teaching and talking about it. And then something is brought to the surface and now you have a game plan to move through it, right? So it accelerates progress. We also do a quarterly symptom review. So you see evidence of change. Like I'm really about the data, like mark it down, put the data, because the data, it informs our brain about like, holy cow, actually, this is reinforcement. It's showing you that you don't have to do it perfectly, but you just get to stick with it. And that is enough to create radical transformation. And then also online training to help you understand why your health is the way it is, and a step-by-step roadmap to learn and to make these new ahas and to really see what's possible. Plus this bonus functional lab work credit. Like I said, we look at specific labs and what's going to make the most sense for your body so that you can get the customization for where you're at now. And honestly, I feel like it really is. It's going to change your life. It changes not only from a financial perspective. I like to put some real numbers to it because this is what clients have experienced in the following years from working together. Whether it be, this is just I mean, many have had way more than this. Some people have had like double their business income, have gone from 2 million to 4 million, things like that. So there have been very big differences, but this is just at a baseline of what you can expect with changes in your life because you choose proactively to invest in your health. It's kind of like, if you have a 401k and you invest in your retirement, you put money purposely into something now so that it pays off more later. It's the same thing with health. And I really, truly think I'm going to kind of go on a little soapbox here, because I really think that we're living in a time with what's happening in the world, with what is coming to the surface and what we now know about lifestyle medicine is the number one absolute determinant of the risk of chronic disease. It's how you're living your life and how you're staying engaged and proactive in your health that is going to have the biggest change. We talk a lot about the health wealth, or the wealth gap, how there's like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And that's a really unfortunate circumstance of the world that we live in today, just because it is like people who have means to invest and to make money tend to have their money grow. I believe we're in the middle of a health revolution where the people who are choosing to proactively invest in their health and put their time, energy, and attention and resources into their health at an earlier age, proactively, way before things become too severe and too extreme that now we're, in multiple chronic disease diagnosis and multiple intensive surgical procedures and things like that. When you invest upfront intentionally into your health, you're going to have the quality of your life and the, like I said, the wealth in your life in a whole variety of ways is going to be completely radically different versus the conventional Western model, which we used to all rely on, was I kind of just live life the way I live until something is wrong and I go to the doctor, and then they either have a surgery, have a pill, or have a procedure to try and manage the disease. But that Western medicine to date is not preventing disease, it's just managing what has already transpired. So the more that we are proactive in getting ahead of it or starting to reverse what has already started, we're going to see an incremental change in our society. I believe that's my belief, and I think there are real hard and factual numbers that go with that from a financial perspective, not to mention from a life fulfillment and enjoyment perspective as well. And the reality is this: like saving $35,000 over the next couple of years is, a 5x, maybe even greater investment on your health journey. So the total value of the program, when I was healing, I invested in many different tools and support mechanisms. I invested way more than this, but this is just like when I did an analysis of the market conditions today and where people are, what's kind of the baseline. Functional doctor, if you work with a functional doctor, run labs and get supplements, that's typically a standard price point, $3,800. Nutritionist, if you work with a nutritionist to give you meal plans and to give you recipes and things like that, again, easily another $1,500 or more. An online course to learn about, so it makes sense instead of just being told here's the supplements to take. Well, it doesn't really land if you don't know what it's doing or why you're taking it. It's easy to then kind of dismiss it or not have the same appreciation and acknowledgement of what this is doing for you. Accountability coach to help implement change so that it actually sticks in your life, and a mindset coach or a therapist or someone to help you with the neuroscience of reframing those limiting beliefs. Because if we don't ever change the patterns that are triggering the sympathetic nervous system, then they'll just keep triggering over and over and over. So we need some support there to change that. So literally, it saves you time and money to have a holistic approach that incorporates these different areas. So here's what you may experience if you join the Thyroid Hormone Solution program. Again, extra energy in each and every day. Part of it is you're more intentional, more alive, more awake, and sleeping better, waking up feeling ready for the day, feeling on purpose. Live medication free. I've had many clients who no longer have a need for medication. Now, I do not prescribe, I do not diagnose, so it's always working with your prescribing physician. But if your body is coming into balance, oftentimes what the medication was used for is no longer necessary. Feel sexy and attractive in clothes that make you feel your best. Reignite your sex life so that you have that deep intimacy and connection. Freedom from addictive cravings. These oftentimes could be sugar cravings, salt cravings, food cravings. For other people, it's cravings for drama. It's cravings for, vegging out on Netflix. It's cravings for disassociation or cravings for, alcohol or other things like that. It's really helping the body to get regulated so you don't have the need for those in the same way. Attract respect and appreciation from your family and colleagues, and experience steady, creative, and joyful inspiration in all areas of your life. So if this is you and you want to do something, I inspire you to take action. I'm going to put into the chat here the opportunity to apply, to learn more, and find out if we'd be a great fit to partner together, right? I don't necessarily, I'm all about like, it's got to be a win-win-win. This is definitely to have a chance, have a conversation. I'm not about high pressure. It's got to be something where like you're excited and you're ready to change your health. And this is something that you see how this can work for you. And really, like I said, I love partnering with the clients I get to work with. They're absolutely amazing. And it's so rewarding, so fulfilling to see how profoundly your life gets to change when you say yes to you. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to unmute, let me know. But thank you so much for being here this week. I definitely encourage you to schedule a conversation. Let's just talk and see if you're even considering like, hey, I'm actually running a special now through Monday for Easter. I've never done this before, but it's kind of a special incentive for people who are recognizing now is the time. It's the lowest price for 2025. From this point forward, the prices of the program are shifting and changing just because of the demand. So this is kind of a special last April chance to get in now and get some support. So I do want to open up, we have a few minutes here. Does anyone have any questions that they want to make sure that they're, tuning into or asking about before we wrap up today? Mm. Anne was asking about, okay, so she had a question here about when we were talking about the microbiome and protein and bloating. So yes, sometimes people can have different, responses, especially to like if you're using a vegan protein powder or a whey protein powder. So if you're finding, depending on which one you're having whey, so if you're finding that, you may want to switch to a vegan protein powder, especially if you have sensitivity to dairy, because it's definitely, with whey protein. But I personally, sometimes I'll vacillate back and forth, but I can't have whey too often, like every single day, because it will start to kind of create a little bit of bloating and my body just doesn't respond to it. So I do think sometimes it's knowing where your body is and what type of protein it's responding to. So if you've been doing whey, I would say to try like a pea protein or a plant-based protein and see if you have different experience there. Because I know that getting sometimes those, we talked about a minimum of a palm of protein, ideally like 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, can be a new change for a lot of us if we haven't been used to eating that much protein regularly. So great question, great question. Any other questions today? Anyone else have anything that's coming up? About the program, how long is it? So yes, so 5 months. Typically I work in the thyroid hormone solution. So we have a month to do each of the 5 steps. So you get, again, it's a pace. I played with different lengths of time and I found that this is kind of the sweet spot because it continues to build the momentum, but it's not at a pace that's like 5 weeks where it's overwhelming and it's not, you don't really get enough chance for the body to have the shift and the change take place. So for 5 months, support my clients and really help walk them through each of these steps. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions about timing? Yes, scheduling a call, you can absolutely. So here's the thing, when you go to that link that I shared in the chat, you can click on the link. It will ask you a couple of questions for the application. Make sure you stay tuned because then after you answer and submit, it will take you to a calendar booking page where you can book a time and let's have a conversation. This is, again, like I said, this is a chance for me to kind of get some of the background information that you shared in the application and talk through where you're looking to go. Like, what are your goals specifically? What have been some of the challenges that you've had or what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't, and what you need now to see if it's a fit. And I'm very honest. Like, some people, I think, just candidly speaking, like, I'm not the best next step for them. And I will be completely transparent and say, you know what, I don't feel that I'm the best next step for you to partner together. Here's what I would suggest that you look to, or here's a recommendation or referral instead. And then for those that I feel really confident, yeah, absolutely. This is the exact type of thing that I've helped women with over and over again, that I would make a recommendation. Like, yes, let's do this. Let's partner together. Let's get you feeling fantastic in your body, and see what's possible. Yeah, thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. Okay, any other questions? Oh, and I think we're just on time. I do get to jump at the top of the hour. So have a fantastic rest of your week. Feel free. I will be sending out all of the replays for the week tomorrow. You'll get all 4 of them. You can watch them over the weekend. You can feel free to email me or respond with any questions. Again, you can always catch me on Instagram too and message me there. That's where I'm visible and kind of out and about the most. Online. So I look forward to staying connected and wish you continued health improvements. All right, have a good one.